Good evening and welcome to this evening's Housing Scrutiny Committee. It's just after 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 29th of October 2025, and we're in the Council Chamber at Leamington Town Hall. The meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel. Please also be aware that as part of the Council's commitment to reducing the use of paper, councillors and officers may use electronic devices during the course of the meeting. I'm Councillor Peter Phillips, Chairman of the committee, and alongside me on the right is Darren Knight, Deputy Chief Executive, and on my left, Josie Wainwright, Scrutiny Officer, and Lola Barrell, Committee Services Officer. In addition, we have from the housing team, Christian Melgard, who's the Interim Head of Housing, Paul Smith, Business Development and Change Manager, Jen Morrison, Project Manager, Philip Dark, Interim Asset Manager, Simon Hodges, Compliance Manager, Matt Watson, I beg your pardon, Fire Safety Lead, and Kevin Tebbett, Housing Needs Manager. Also joining us this evening, I'm pleased to say, is our peer support, Councillor Alison Barnes, who is the leader of Rossendale Borough Council. Thank you for coming all the way down from the north this afternoon. And attending from Cabinet, on behalf of the Cabinet, is the new permanent portfolio holder for housing, Councillor Melrose. Emergency procedure. There are no planned tests of the emergency alarm. If the alarm does sound, everyone present must leave by the designated exit route. If the preferred route is blocked, use the nearest signed alternative route. Don't use the lift. Everyone must assemble at the designated point, which is the central reservation in Regent Grove, to our right, in front of the police station. Members of the public and press should report to a member of the Town Hall staff, who will be wearing yellow fluorescent jackets. Councillors and officers should report to the committee services officers, and please do not re-enter the building until the fire officer advises that it is safe to do so. I've been asked to remind all of us when using mics to not place any electronic equipment, such as your laptop, in front of the mic, because this affects the mic's effectiveness. I do get comments actually that quite a few of our meetings aren't the most audible on the YouTube channel, and I don't know if that's part of the cause of it. I'd also like to welcome Councillor Firth and Councillor Knight, who are attending the first Housing Scrutiny Committee, and looking forward to working with them on the Housing Scrutiny Committee. We've also received pre-scrutiny Q&As from a number of members. I hope you've all had a chance to read those, and they were sent out, I think, a couple of days ago, so hopefully you've all had a chance to read those Q&As. Moving on then to the formal agenda. First of all, apologies and substitutes. I've had apologies from Councillor Davison as the leader of the council. Any other apologies? Okay. Just particularly with at least 2 new members and a couple of new officers. Just to remind, the remit for the Housing Scrutiny Committee is to review and challenge the progress with respect to ensuring compliance with safety under the Social Housing Regulation Act, an overall view on the operation and delivery of the Housing Investment Plan and the Housing Revenue Account. And as such, we provide assurance on the delivery of these to the Cabinet on behalf of the Council. Members, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? I see none. Let's move on. Minutes. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the detailed minutes of the meeting held on the 17th September. Firstly, thank you to all the officers for all the work you've done in following up on the action items identified in the minutes. I'm pleased to report there are no outstanding actions from those minutes as a result of that. As I say, thank you to all the officers involved, both those here present and those who've contributed who are not here. Any comments on the minutes? Councillor Barnes.
Hello, I have been told it's okay for me to speak, and it's not necessarily on the minutes. I just wanted to make the point that I think this is the 3rd lot of papers I've had for this committee now, and just want to say how much easier it has been to read through the committee papers and understand where things are up to. And just to say congratulations. I know Josie's probably done a lot of work on this, but it's just so much easier to read through and understand and get a grip of what the issues are and where things are going. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. I think that's, I would certainly echo that in terms of the reports are a lot more straightforward to read. So thank you again to officers for that. Any other comments on the minutes? No. Could I have a proposer for the minutes then, please? Councillor Bode and seconded by Councillor Knight. And we have to vote to approve. So all those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you. Right. Moving on to item 4, the work programme. We've been having a bit of discussion about the HRA budget and whether it should come, or when it should come rather, to here. And we have decided to defer that to the December meeting. I think it's December the 2nd? December the 2nd meeting, when we'll have a more comprehensive overview of the budget and business plan. And what I've asked Councillor Melrose is to make sure that she is confident that she has the financial resources to be able to deliver what we need to be able to deliver in the housing team. And I think she's taken that challenge away, and we'll cover that more details when we come to the work programme in December. Are there therefore, if I can throw this open to the floor, members, you've seen the work programme in the agenda. Have you got any comments or suggestions about it? Councillor Bode.
Yes, I was looking through the Housing Scrutiny Committee terms of reference, and it says quite clearly that the leader and portfolio holder for housing assets will be required to attend each meeting, to act as an observer, and send a deputy from the Cabinet if they cannot attend. I don't see the leader.
And I've not received any notification of the deputy leader. Councillor Melrose, do you want to comment on that?
The leader is away and sent his apologies. We did look for a deputy, unfortunately haven't, so I'm sort of acting with both roles tonight, as I was yesterday at Audit and Standards.
I will write to Councillor Davison. If we could, minutes I need to write to him, please. I will write to Councillor Davison.
I will stress that this is an additional meeting, and I know his plans had already been booked by this point.
I understand that, yes, but my point is this is the second meeting that Councillor Davis has not been present, and I think we do need him present. As you do say, this is an additional meeting because we have so much work to do that we decided to put an additional meeting in a couple of meetings ago. But even so, I think we need to find either the leader himself or a deputy leader. So, anything else to add, Councillor Bode?
No, not at this stage. I think the ideas which are coming in here, which we have topics for different meetings, means we can get into them a lot better than trying to do the whole lot, which doesn't really work.
Yeah. Councillor Gorman.
Yes, so it talks about the performance of housing, says that's been moved, the performance of housing services KPI report, and said that's been moved to the 2nd of December because it needs a deep dive in a meeting with more time. But that looks like quite a packed meeting. Has that actually solved the issue at all?
You want to take that, Mr. Knight, or?
Yeah, I think we can take that away as part of the preparation for next meeting. Yeah.
I think Councillor Gorman's right. When I look at the December the 2nd, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items already on that agenda. So it is a packed agenda. So we need some sort of idea fairly shortly whether you think that's going to be doable.
Yeah, I'll pick up with Josie at the end of the week, and we'll look to try and repropose what the agenda should be for that meeting. Make sure you're happy with it. So yeah,
I think the challenge we have when I just look at those is that all the items on there are fairly significant.
Some could be considered a briefing
And we need you and Mr Melgar then to take that away and come back with a review of that. Anything else to add, Councillor Gorman? No. Councillor Dixon.
I just wonder, can you shout me down? I believe that there is going to be a review of the homeless strategy, sort of maybe early going on into the new year, and I wonder whether that should be, that should come to us as well.
Councillor Melrose.
I wouldn't disagree with Councillor Dixon. I think that is a good suggestion. I will speak with officers and find a suitable time when it be the appropriate time to come in next year.
Our meeting after the December 2nd one, the next one is January the 27th. Then I think that we only have one more meeting. It's 31st of March after that, so it's probably you should be aiming for the end of January, I would think. Any other comments, questions on the work programme? Do we need to approve that or just note it?
Approve the minutes. Oh, work
No,
programme.
we've approved the
No.
minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've approved the minutes. We don't need to, I think we just need to note the work programme members, if that's okay with you. Yep, okay, thank you. Stanford Gardens roof work. I think this is a verbal update. Oh, thank you. Mr Knight has raised another point on that we'd like to also pick up and, sorry, I'm going back to item 4, beg your pardon. I'd also like to request that we have a report on regarding the safety of our high-rise blocks, and not just all of them, particularly around anything to do with safety, and also an update in relation to Sayer Court at some point. Now, we're going to have to review when we put that and what it is when it goes onto the agenda. But I think, given that we have quite a lot of our tenants in high-rise blocks, and I know there's a lot of fire safety work has been done over the last 8 years since Grenfell. I think it's 8 years since Grenfell, isn't it? But I still think it's something we ought to be keeping an eye on. Mr Knight, yes.
Yeah, just members are clear. So we've got 2 regulators we are accountable to: the building safety regulator for high rises, and the regulator for social housing for the other side of things. So I think that's quite a big agenda item, and I think we'll probably need to we'll take a time away where we know enough time on the agenda to cover it off and give the team enough time to prepare an update around that. And can I just also welcome Councillor Firth and Councillor Knight to the committee. I think the committee will agree it's always good to have more Knights around the table. So they need to get that one in, so thank you.
Oh dear. Is there any disciplinary measure you can take for bad puns, Mr Knight? I see Councillor Knight nodding his head in agreement. Let's move on fast. Back to, sorry, you completely thrown me there. Stanford Gardens roof works. Mr Dark.
Right, well, I'm very pleased to report that the roofing works have been completed and the scaffolding has now been taken down from the building. We're now moving to the next stage of carrying out remedial works in the flats, and we'll be in contact with residents, advising them of the timescales for that work.
What's the residents' feedback been so far on this?
I've not received any resident feedback personally. I'll take that away and come back to the committee on that.
Yeah, I think this is one that's close to Councillor Syce and I think Councillor Bode's heart in terms of making sure the communication there is really on point. But thank you. That sounds a positive update. I think we're much better placed than we were 8 weeks or so ago, by the sound of things. Anybody want to comment on this? Councillor Knight, are you raising your hand there? Or is it? No.
I'm just trying to look for it first before I make a comment.
Councillor Dixon, you want to? No. Yes, Councillor Bird.
Can I just ask that there's more work being done to the block? It would be good to know what expenditure are we going to put on the block to bring it up to standard? Because I think we've got an issue with high-rise flats where we think we've got there and we've solved it, and then the rules change, we have to do more. So it'd be good to know what's the overall basket per block of money that we need to spend on them. That could lead to other decisions.
I think that must be related to other decisions and indeed to the work that Mr Knight will do, but specifically in the work on Stanford Gardens, perhaps. Yes.
I think with the blocks, I think it'd be really helpful to understand the programme of rectification, what's required, the cost associated, and are there any other complications and risks associated with the works needed to all those, because all those buildings are they're all different. And we'll have different levels of complexity investment needed. And so I think it'd be really good actually where we'll get the Paul Arundel to come to the committee probably in the new year, and we allow more time for that one item to go through in a bit of depth where those blocks are at, the challenges around and the investment needed around them, and also around regulatory compliance around them as well, and tenant safety clearly is going to be a key part of that discussion as well.
Right, Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I'm happy that the roof complete, but I would love to hear what residents think, and also I would love if a member of the scrutiny panel could just go and just have a look at it to make sure everything is perfect before we move further.
Can that be arranged, Mr Dark? For Councillor Knight, are you volunteering yourself?
I'm happy to go.
Yes, is the answer to that question. I think.
Yes. Yeah, I'll link you up with Timmy, and yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's a very good idea, and I think maybe have a very quick update at the next meeting from you, Councillor Knight, and Mr Dark on that. It shouldn't be more than a couple of minutes, I would think. Hopefully, that you're going to find things in order. Any more questions or any more updates on that? Again, I think it's just to note. So let's move on. Voids and compliance lettable standard. We requested a report on this back in May. It's an area where I think we do have significant concerns about what's been, I don't know if it is a deterioration, but it hasn't yet improved to the standard we would like it to be. I believe, Mr Tebbit, that you're going to lead on this.
Thank you, Chair. The report is brought to committee following requests for information regarding void performance and adherence to the lettable standard. I'll take the report as read. The report highlights the current level of performance with void properties. Whilst the relet times peaked at 128 days during 2022-2023, it has reduced on a consistent basis to its current performance of 83 days during August of this year. However, we all recognise and accept that this is not where we want to be. And we have now started a journey of improvement to reduce the relet times leading up to the end of this financial year. And with the work that's been completed to date, we are in a good position to continue with the reduction in relet times. However, I do have to point out that due to staff vacancies, which have only been recently filled, we have experienced a backlog and although the newly appointed lettings officer is already making inroads to reduce the backlog, as a result, we are likely to see an increase in vignette times before we start to see a longer term reduction before the end of the financial year. To give you an overview of the improvements actions taken to date, we have completed an end-to-end review of the void process, which included the introduction of a pre-termination inspection process. That's to identify any outstanding repairs that can be completed before the void process starts, and to provide advice to tenants to ensure that property is left empty and free of any garden rubbish. We've also introduced revised procedures to ensure consistency of approach, and are shortening the inspection process so that inspection and surveys are arranged on the first day of the void. In addition to that, we now take fortnightly meetings to monitor progress on performance. We've also completed a review of the performance monitoring with the key milestones in that process now identified. So managers can now drill down to identify blockages in the process. And that's from start to finish. We're also looking at moving forward in terms of introducing daily tenancies. Currently, our tenancies start on a Monday, and if, for example, we have a void back on a Tuesday and we sign up on the Wednesday, the tenancy starts on the following Monday. Looking at daily tenancies will reduce that time frame. We're also looking at the introduction of digital enhancements for inspections and sign-ups to reduce officer time completing paperwork. And we're also looking at improving the quality and information on our home choice adverts to reduce the number of refusals, which will look at including a floor plan, a link to a direction map, and increasing the number of photographs used. So it's akin to what you see on the Rightmove websites. That's a short overview. I hope it gives you an understanding of the current situation with void performance and the actions already in place, and those actions that we're going to be looking at as part of the improvement journey. At the moment, the focus is very much on getting the number of voids down, and during the coming months, we'll be undertaking additional analysis to help inform our approach going forward. And if members wish, a further report can be brought back to the Scrutiny Committee towards the end of the year, financial year that is, to outline the progress achieved. Thank you.
Members, Councillor Bode.
Thank you. It's an interesting report, which isn't full of good news. And the things that you're talking about introducing, when you bear in mind that we're looking at a target of 80 days for turnaround. So having an electronic piece of equipment, how many days will that save? Probably a couple of hours. And there's a number of things that you do. We've got a big issue here. It's 80 days. You look at what the average is across the country, and you're down to about 40 odd, which is half what we're talking about. And I just wonder, how long are we going to sustain this? We're in the lower quartile by a long way. Our turnaround averages, sorry, computer's gone, averages 80 days. The average spend is about £1,500. So how does it take 80 days to spend just over £1,000 doing the work? I don't understand it. There is something fundamentally wrong in what we're doing, and I'm not convinced that what we're being told is going to be introduced. You might knock 5 days off if you've got a following wind. I mean, it really is bad. And it's been bad for years. Are we in the system where it's what we're used to, and we get a few improvements on that, and that's what we've done well? I mean, it is atrocious. It's A, stopping people getting housed, and B, hitting our revenue stream. And it's just not good enough. Now, you've had people, I don't know how many people you've had missing, so you've had to recruit. But unless you're getting a shed load of people in, you're not going to touch these numbers. And it's not good. And then I move on to what's the standard when people move in. Certainly when I've been involved, okay, we only see the bad ones, but there shouldn't be the bad. When I say we only see the bad ones, they are bad. And that's not good enough either. And it really wants a good shake-up to actually get this right. I see we've got a target there of somewhere around about the 80. It should be about 45. That should be your target. Else we're never going to get there. So it's bad, and something needs doing about it, because it's not good enough.
Councillor Barton, are you going to add something to Councillor Bode, or do you want to let Mr Tebbit and maybe Councillor Melrose respond?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, thanks, Chair, and apologies everybody for turning up late. Along the same similar thing, is the problem with the lead-in time to the contractor going to carry out the work, or is the problem from when the contractors finish the work until the tenant moves in? So if the tenant needs to give 4 weeks' notice somewhere else, does that mean our property then is vacant for 4 weeks before that tenant moves in? So is it the lead-in time to works being carried out and being passed off, or is it the lead-in time to the tenant moving in, which is extending it to the 86 days?
Mr Tebbit.
Thank you. It's a combination of factors. There are, because this is an average turnaround time, so there'll be more properties where there's less than 80 days, there'll be some with more than 80 days. Some properties do include major works, such as subsidence, things like that. But in addition to that, we have got obviously issues with our contractors to ensure that those works have been completed within a reasonable period of time. That there are some issues as well with the allocation of accommodation. So, for example, we may have 4, 5, 6 offers on a particular property. If somebody accepts a property and then they view it and refuse it, we have to go through the process again in terms of shortlisting, advertising, shortlisting, and signing up the tenant again, or arranging a company view. So there's not one issue that's responsible for it. There's a number of issues that contribute to this outcome.
Councillor Barton.
Okay, well, coming back on that then, isn't it false economy, or whatever you want to call it, false economy to put a house in that has got substantial faults and is going to be off the market for 6 to 12 months, say, and some are, I agree, some are. Isn't it false then to include them in that 80-day turnaround figure if that property is in a totally unlettable condition? Would that then bring your figures back to something a bit more decent?
Yeah. So the major voids are excluded from the relet times, so the real substantial issues with some of the properties are excluded from the relet times.
I think I saw Councillor Whiteman's hand first, and then Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I mean, to be honest, it was actually on that point of the exclusion. I was just trying to work out these figures. We are comparing like to like, are we, in terms of the average? I notice it does exclude voids where major works have been carried out. I'm assuming we're comparing like for like, and the other people's average times have excluded major works.
That's correct.
And in terms of our overall performance on voids, how does our performance in addressing major voids and getting properties relet compare? Do we have any statistics on that?
That detail, I can arrange for that to be forward to you. I've not got it with me tonight, but that sort of detail can be provided, yes.
Okay, thank you. I suppose the concern here, I mean, when the original HQS report came out in regards to consumer standards, this was identified as a quick win, because clearly we've got a number of our residents, you know, in urgent housing needs sitting in temporary accommodation, and voids are a loss to everybody. You know, they're a loss of revenue to all of our district residents. They leave people in temporary accommodation when we've got empty facilities there. Looking at this, I mean, clearly there is an improvement, but it doesn't really demonstrate the quick win turnaround that perhaps was anticipated when the report came out. And I notice as well, the initial thinking was that it would be far more proactive. So from the moment we had wind that anybody was moving out, or anybody had certainly issued notice, there would be far more proactive sort of contact. There's a number of indications in this report that cause me some concern. I mean, I noticed, for example, there seems to be a big increase in the cost of addressing these voids, well above the sort of inflation, and a suggestion that residents are now leaving far more rubbish than they previously did. I was hoping that perhaps one of the wins from the more proactive approach of having contact ahead of the termination date and the void kicking in would be that, you know, that there would be that two-way communication with the tenants, and perhaps we'd actually see improvements there. So is it a little bit concerning that, as well as these figures being, you know, well, 86.54, the median is 45.77. I mean, the upper quartile average is 29.38. It strikes me here, you know, given this is such an area of high focus, we should be, and we're putting a lot of resource in as a council, we should really be aiming a lot higher. I reflect Councillor Bode's thing that the very least we should be looking is the median, but I mean, I would ask that we should ultimately be aiming for upper quartile on this. It's a complete travesty, really, that we've got people sitting in temporary accommodation and we've got empty units that could assist them. So really, we want to be aiming very high on this. We want to be aiming for upper quartile. You know, I appreciate it's a journey we're on, but, you know, that must be the destination we're all aiming for. Just wonder why we haven't perhaps made the progress that we might have hoped.
I think, Mr Tubbett, you can pick up Councillor White and effectively Councillor Bode's very broadly the same direction comments on that, and then I'll come to Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the pre-inspections and the amount of rubbish that's being left in the properties and in the gardens, the pre-inspection process that's been introduced now will have an opportunity for the housing officer and the inspector to visit that property within that 4-week period, ideally at the beginning of the notice period, so within the first week. That would allow then that officer to identify any repairs that potentially could be completed before the property became void. It would allow the officer to advise the tenant on any tenant damage that potentially may be present in the property and what would need to be done. And it also allows the officers to advise the tenants on the condition of the property it should be left in. So that we have experienced a lot of furniture being left in the properties, for example, rubbish left in the gardens, which does add to the cost of the void, and we're very anxious to reduce those costs through this process. We are monitoring that now in terms of the success that may deliver in terms of the reduction in the cost of rubbish removal for those particular properties. But I do accept your point. It is an acceptable position we're in terms of the performance. We should be aiming for higher outcomes. The figure or the target for 26, 27 hasn't been set yet, but that will be something that will be confirmed as part of the service area plan and be signed off by senior leadership team and members prior to 26, 27. So no doubt we will be aiming for that upper quartile performance.
Could I just do a follow-up question there? And I may have missed it. I have read this report a couple of times, but I understand why 26, 27 hasn't yet been set, and no doubt Councillor Melrose and the leadership team will work on that. But what was the 25, 26 target? I can't see that anywhere in the report. And apologies if I've missed it.
It's 80 days, 25, 26.
So it's the same as 24, 25?
It is, yes.
Right, okay. Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chair. I still have concern about the 80 days turnaround. Is it the work turnaround or the overall turnaround? Because 80 days, even if I calculate it by 5 days, is 16 weeks. If I calculate it by 7 days, is 11 weeks. So is it the work turnaround or the overall turnaround for the property to ready? And if it's a work turnaround, we need it to break down to specifically say is 80 days is a work turnaround, not the overall turnaround. And when it comes to the rubbish left behind, do we find those residents? We just put the cost back to us. Thank you.
For any rubbish left in the property that involves a cost to the local authority, the cost is recharged to the outgoing tenant. The breakdown of the void process can be broken down into component parts, so we can see where those potential delays are, and part of the performance review that's been undertaken breaks it down to very specific milestones within that overall process. So the reports that are now available, we can identify very quickly where those potential blockages might be or are, and which we can target the resources to overcome those particular blockages.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. Actually, my question's just been asked because it was about recharging for rubbish removal, but I do wonder whether there's an opportunity for the council to provide a service. Right. Many of us will have moved out of a house, and one of the biggest challenges is removing rubbish, sorting out, disposing of things. It is a service that the council provides, it's a collection, and could there be a package to provide service for our tenants?
It's something we can definitely look at. Through my own experience, and my mother's property is vacant at the moment, and it's full of 1950s, 1960s furniture. It's a problem to move it out, and the local authority do provide that sort of service. So yes, we can certainly look at that.
I do wonder, as somebody like Helping Hands, who have been very good over the years that I've been working, been aware of them, let's say, whether they could actually help take some of the furniture if it's usable. Clearly, if it's not usable, it's a different matter, but if it's usable, whether Helping Hands might, or similar, obviously they're the local ones. Other comments, councillors? Mr. Melgar.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just add to what Mr. Tippett has said. Absolutely fair challenges from committee members around performance where we are, and we accept that. It's clear from the report where we'd like to be in terms of performance. I believe we can get there. We have undertaken the review to begin with to make absolutely clear where responsibility lies for the void process, for the lettings process. That's in train for recruitment to the final post within landlord team. We've undertaken some analysis of the challenges within the end-to-end process and are putting in place actions to address at each stage. We will be doing more in-depth analysis to look at particular blockages and particular cases because, as has been raised today, it is an average, so understanding where outliers might be distorting the performance. We may see a deterioration in the short term as we bring empty properties back into use, but in the last 2 months we have been able to reduce the overall number of void properties by 20%. So we have reduced that within 2 months, which has brought properties that were empty back into occupation, bringing in money to the council. We will continue that trajectory in the coming months with a focus of the teams on delivery, and that includes holding contractors to account as well. We'll be working with the teams to, again, provide further assurance around the tenant experience of moving in. We're going to take phone surveys on everyone who moves in within a couple of weeks' time. We then follow up with any repairs which are needed and follow up on questioning why, if the property wasn't in a good condition for them. So we'll be taking that and using that information and learning from it. So I think within the next few months we'll see a continued reduction in the number of empty homes, them occupied, and at a slightly longer period, moving into next year, we'll see that relet time overall reduce. And I would like to see it at a minimum expectation to be at the average level. I completely agree, and it should be there. I don't see any reason why it can't be. And I think by the end of the financial year, we'll be able to present a positive picture of the journey, that improvement journey throughout the year, showing improvement to the service that tenants have received, performance, and benefit to the council in terms of increased income from letting those homes. So I think just to provide a bit of assurance around that it does have our focus. I think maybe that accountability was spread a little thin, but now it's absolutely clear where that accountability is, and I have oversight of that, and that will continue to improve over the coming months.
Thank you. I think if I can summarise as members... Oh, Councillor Barton, sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just wonder whether we could have a few more columns on the stats table. You say it's 86.54 for 453 properties. I think it'd be nice to know that 350 of them properties were 50 days and 100 of those properties were 120 days, a bit more, and then try to nail down why the excess dates are really excess, or are we hitting about 86 days for every property? And we need an overall improvement. But could we have another couple of columns, do you think, on that table?
I'm very happy to add in extra information, and for a future iteration of a report, which certainly I see other councils and registered providers seeing as an annual review of lettings and lettings performance and voids, but also I'd seek to provide the committee with an understanding of actually who we have let our properties to, where have they come from? Have they come from temporary accommodation? Have they come from where on the waiting list blocked children, families, and how have we placed them? So providing a bit more information and context around that element, as well as the performance of the team in letting them. So very happy to pull that into a fuller report in future.
Thank you. I was going to summarise, I think, the feeling in the room from members is this is unsatisfactory as it is. We have to recognise that it's improved in the last couple of years. I think there's no point in just pretending it hasn't improved, but I think we could only rate this as red at the moment, I'm afraid. I think I'm getting nods from members. It's encouraging what you say, and I think the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and I know Councillor Melrose and I have discussed this outside this meeting previously, and she wants to look at doing an end-to-end review of what is happening on this. So, Councillor Melrose, perhaps, given that we are rating this red, you might like to just pick up some of the actions from your perspective.
No, thank you. And I know we have discussed this previously about where are the pain points, where are the blockages. And like you said, it has decreased, but it's not good enough, especially when you're looking at other councils with probably similar size stock. Their numbers of voids are half. I think when we look at the challenges, obviously there's recruitment, that takes time. We can't bring people in the next day. And we do need to look at the end-to-end services and say, right, is it contract, is it this, and use that intelligence to help build them. In terms of the service plan, as we said, the target has been set for next year, but that is something we're in active discussion, so I will take the points raised by several members tonight of the committee and feed that back to Cabinet when we make what we try and make our target next year for voids to be.
I'm not sure of the timing of when you put those together, Councillor Maris. Is that going to be this side of Christmas or just after Christmas?
I'm trying to remember the forward plan in front of my face.
So am I, and I can't remember.
We are in active discussion about service area plans for the next 2 years now, so it is actually a very timely discussion to have that, to look at that, going actually.
I think what I'd like to suggest, if members agree, is that we ask for a light report, update report in January. I think December's only 4 weeks away, so it's 6 weeks away. At the end of January, because it's the 27th of January, I think, and that we have an update report, and that to include the target for 26-27, any other things you find there. I'd also like to ask that we have the graphic that we've got, and members, there was a separate email that hopefully you've seen from committee services, I presume from yourself, right, and that showed the graphic. But I'd also like to see that on a per unit basis, not just in total. And to see where we are in January, 3 months on from here. It may not be huge progress, but I'm expecting to see some progress. So that maybe you'll get it from red to amber. That's what I'd like to be able to by the end of the year, see us starting to hit some better, much better numbers than we're doing at the moment. Any other questions, members? Yes, Councillor Whiteman.
There was just one other thing in the report. I noticed, and I couldn't disagree with it as a matter of common sense, if the property is habitable but the tenant wants to move in, that they will allow them to go in and agree that, schedule the works afterwards. To a point, that's common sense. But on another sort of hand, I'm a little bit concerned about if that becomes the sort of routine, because at the moment our void times aren't terribly impressive, and that may be sort of slightly improving them, because really, as a district council, we should be aiming, to have a letting procedure that lets them within a good time at the right appropriate standard. Can we at least assure moving forwards that we keep very careful statistics on that to monitor, firstly, how many properties we're letting below the required standard, but two, how quickly after the letting we're following up with those, remedial works to ensure they are at the required standard? Because I think the time is one thing, but we ought to be aiming as a council for the default to be that we're letting them at the required standard within the required time.
Thank you. You just added what I was going to exactly say. I think we ought to be, the default is that it meets the required standard. I know there's quite a bit of discussion in the what do you call these, the pre-scrutiny questions about vouchers, etc. And I guess that's possibly just about within default standard, but I think we should be looking to be every time hitting the proper standard rather than using, I would call it sleight of hand, potentially to get the numbers down. And again, I hear you're excluding maybe some of the worst unlettable properties, but again, I don't think we should be excluding those from the numbers. There may need to be a note, but I think we need to be aware that if we've got a property that needs 6 months of work for whatever reason, I can't imagine what it is, but then that shouldn't be excluded from the numbers, but that should be flagged to us as a problem. So we also get to understand what's happening. Mr. Melchior. Yeah.
Oh, quickly, Chair. I mean, I think that would absolutely be the case. This would only be, in fact, we'd expect to meet lettable standard, and then anything which was on top of that, we would do with agreement from the tenant. Contractors don't particularly want to be going into a property that's occupied if they can help, if they've got an empty property to work on. I think in the rare occasion where there can be something cosmetic carried out and for purposes of expediency, but we will track where that is being done. We'll also pick up from the 2-week survey when we ask tenants were they happy with the condition of the property, anything that's outstanding to ensure that nothing is left and drags on and tenants have to chase.
Yes, I have a fear that probably all of us have experienced cases where it's been let and it's not quite to the right standard. So I think we would definitely encourage you to go down that route. Members, I think that's everything on this, in which case, again, we just note the report. And thank you, officers, for the feedback on that. Going to move on to item 7, stock condition survey. We were a little bit concerned last time about the timelines, etc. on this. And Mr. Dark, perhaps I can hand over to you to introduce the report.
Essentially the report sets out a projected programme for the stock condition surveys. Just to recap as well, to clarify, we've carried out 4,000 dwelling surveys and 500 block surveys in the past 3 years. And then we've got 1,673 surveys to do to actually complete that. We've got 3 surveyors in position delivering that. The programme that was set out was projected based on the rates of the surveys that were being carried out, and was projecting delivery by the end of January. And the report, just to clarify, the figures in the report and on the numbers carried out are progress at the end of August. So that's an introduction to the report. We have had ongoing issues with access to properties. So we have been delivering the rates of attempts of carrying out the surveys. But we haven't been able to gain access to all of the properties. At the moment, the access rate is around 50%. So we need to redefine the programme. We also have sickness with a member of staff, so we're making arrangements to cover that as well. So I'll take questions now.
Members, Councillor Bird again.
On the can't get into the property, how many visits do we do and what action can we take after if we still can't get access?
We are typically at around 4 visits per property now, in terms of attempt to access, and then we're escalating then to a housing team to get some assistance with access. We're also beginning to look at when the gas servicing is due at properties, so we can link up with gas servicing or with electrical testing, because that gives an opportunity to get access to the properties. So, yeah.
Do you have problems getting access to the gas, for instance? That's got to be done within a certain time frame.
Some of the ones, a couple of examples we've had with the surveyors, trouble with access. There has been issues with getting access with gas. So yeah, that's something that we need to work on to make sure that we deal with that.
Yeah, I think that's important, where it's particularly at risk of life, not just of the tenants, but the people in the whole block, is we only want one accident. And it's right saying, well, we couldn't get access, couldn't do this. You should have done. And now somebody's dead. And you always have to face up to, you might see somebody wearing a curly wig, and that's not the place where anyone wants to be. So it's recognise you've got problems, understand that, but it's what can we do to try and enforce access, because it could turn and bite us.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to sort of add a broader context on this, certainly in the last few years as a sector, we've seen what might be termed sort of visit fatigue. The amount of times that organisations are having to gain access to properties for gas servicing, electrical regulations, carbon monoxide testing, equipment, for fire safety actions, for stock condition surveys. A lot of tenants are saying, well, you need access again? For what? Why? I think it's a lot clearer in the case of gas servicing, where absolutely we have a duty to produce and service an appliance to ensure it's safe for the residents and the residents of the building. And we have a robust escalation process and enforcement injunction process on the back of that, that we will gain access via the court if we need to. I think that one of the challenges we have is where this is more, let's say, advisory, but we need to confirm the validity of the condition of the property to inform our programme. So I think some of it is about explaining to residents why we need to. But because a decent home survey, stock condition involves inspection of all rooms, it could feel a bit more intrusive. I think residents sometimes feel that they're not as willing to let us in, and I think that's something that the teams are encountering. We are looking to strengthen resourcing in terms of the planning behind that, sort of arranging it and communicating why we need access to help us inform that programme and look at when new kitchens and bathrooms are needed to ensure there's no hazards. So I think there's a bit of soft communication there that we need to carry out. It's very rare, in fact, it's not possible for every organisation to have an up-to-date active stock condition survey, because there'll always be incidents of no access, and organisations will take a view on cloning, sort of taking a similar property and applying a principle to it. And that's a principle that's been established for some time. I think it's about us taking a practical approach to looking to gain access to as many properties as possible, explain the reasons, but to do it in a way that isn't adversarial. I think for these type of inspections, respecting that these are people's homes, we're requesting access to help us inform the investment that we're going to carry out. And I think we just want to make sure we've got the right balance of not going down the route of what was very much an injunction enforcement process, but something we have to do in terms of gas servicing and gas safety, but also maximising the intelligence we can get from going out. So I think there's a bit more to do there, but I think we need to reflect in the programme the reoccurrence of no access, because I think if we were gaining 50%, while we may have attempted a visit and even 4 visits to every property, that's quite time consuming. I think we need to caveat that we will endeavour to do those visits, but we are subject still to gaining access. But I think we can provide a bit more assurance around the protocol, the communication we do, and how we explain to residents why this is important.
I'm going to ask the naive question. I think you said there were 5 or 6 different reasons for access. Does that mean there are 5 or 6 different individuals going into a building, or can one individual do multiple controls at the same time?
I think if one existed, Chair, I'd be in that job. I think, as Mr. Dark says, our aim is to try and dovetail where we can, where it's practicable, to join up and visit. I think it's much more sensible to do that. Certainly on new build design, some organisations are trying to make items that need to be inspected accessible from the exterior of the building, not requiring entry. But I think where we are, there'll always be an element of having specialists that need to attend. I think for us is trying to coordinate with our teams and contractors to arrange for appointments that can be simultaneous. Can't always be guaranteed, particularly where works are required. But I think we can't avoid the fact that there will be specialists, and the aim will be to reduce the number of visits and to become more efficient. But I don't think we can entirely eliminate the need for multiple visits.
Councillor Barton, then Councillor Whiteman.
I suppose I have every sympathy for you, because in our business, in my line of business, we know which tenants won't let us in. There's one that we haven't been able to get in for now for nearly 5 years. And at the moment, we're trying to organise all the trades to go into that property at the same time. But then you get the problem of you've got, like you say, 5 or 6 checks, the gas, the electric, the asbestos, etc., etc. Trying to get all them in the same day is virtually impossible. I've got every sympathy for you, and I feel sorry for you. Hopefully you feel sorry for me as well, but it's a difficult task.
Councillor White, thank you.
I mean, I share the sympathy on this because I think it's always going to be very difficult to ever get to 100%, you know, in terms of this. I just want to sort of understand what we need to achieve because, frankly, it is going to be difficult, you know, to actually get to the standard that's being required by the regulator here because the consumer standards, what do they actually require? I mean, I understood they needed, you know, validation on, you know, within 5 years on all properties. What wriggle room have we got here? Because, you know, in terms of reasonableness, it strikes me actually that in some of these demands, let's be honest, they're not terribly reasonable. You know, they are actually requiring, and always as we're getting towards 100%, it strikes me there's always the potential there to become more difficult. You know, where you're going to be sticking a little bit because you're coming up with those properties where there are access difficulties, where the residents are a little bit less receptive, a little bit less cooperative, and you're having to get through those, and it's kind of that painting the long bridge type thing, isn't it? You know, by the time you actually get there, you're needing to start all over again with some of the older properties and some of the older... The underlying problem here, in terms of, you know, my understanding of the HQS report, was really a lot of the issues that we faced as a council were down to statistical weakness. But ultimately, somehow we need to grapple with these difficulties and come up with solutions if we're going to actually address those underlying problems.
Yes, Mr. Melcart.
No, thank you. It's a good question, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of the end goal. I think as officers, you know, it is a means to an end. I think there's an expectation from the regulator that we have a granular understanding of our assets, our dwellings, the homes in which our tenants live in, to provide assurance through to this committee and cabinet and the regulator that they are safe, they are fit for habitation. We are maintaining them properly. We are complying with the home standard. The way to do that is by gaining access to properties to inspect them for hazards, inspect the condition and the life of components within those. Stock condition surveys are a good way of getting that information in one go. We also glean information from where we carry out kitchens and bathroom works, improvements, updates to our systems, other visits where we check for any hazards. So it's part of a multiple number of ways that we collect that data into a single place. There is a law of diminishing returns. Organisations that will have an element where we haven't been able to get access, or we're not going to visit every property. This was sort of prevalent years ago, where 100% stock condition survey was quite rare. With the move to the new consumer standards, with expectations of the regulator, with really, as an organisation, any way to sort of provide that top line assurance is to get into all the properties. There will be properties that remain where access is more difficult. I think the key for us is identify as we get closer to having a number of properties that we haven't been able to access. We have other data, as I've mentioned, that we can triangulate and form a picture of. We may have to make some assumptions about properties where we've not gained access. We will also be looking at where we work with things like the no access process to understand any vulnerabilities, any risks that might be behind the door of properties where people won't let us in. But fundamentally, the work that we do is to inform, one, putting right hazards that may exist in the property, but also to inform our long-term programme of work, to set out the programme of work, the cost of work, what we need to do to keep those properties fit for purpose, fit for habitation, safe, and of the quality that is expected into the future. And that programme is informed by the data we collect, and it's a regulator's expectation that we use and evidence that data to inform that programme, to look at where we might have to spend money, how we use that money, what we need to do, and adapt to any changes in regulations that are coming through, like the new Decent Homes Protocol, for example. So I think when we get closer to resolving that picture, we will have a smaller number of properties where there won't be access left, but we'll have to explain that, how we make assumptions about those. Because I think there will always be some gaps in our direct knowledge.
Yes, Councillor White, when you want to come back? Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that response, and you know it all sounds very reasonable. I suppose my question here is, in terms of our journey on the consumer standards, addressing the issues that have already been raised. Are you confident we will get to C2 and C1 with an incomplete stock survey? And do we have any soundings from the regulator at this point? If 100% isn't achievable, what is required in order to make that journey to C2 and C1, which is where we're obviously going? And are we confident, if I can just come in with one final question, are we confident, because there are a number of references in here to resource issues, are we putting adequate resources here to get as far as we possibly can, given the constraints that clearly exist here?
I think I'd be cautious about committing to C1 and C2. The expectation we will have 100% as in stock condition information, because we'll have made assumptions on properties where we may have been able not to get in for a full stock condition survey, but we'll have information that we've gleaned from other sources to inform that overall position. I think it's about setting out our approach and our rationale to the regulator to say where we've not been able to gain access, what we've assumed and why, and have we taken a risk-based approach. And if we've made best endeavours to gain access to those properties, as discussed, in a reasonable way, to be able to provide assurance through to this committee and Cabinet as well that we've done that. I think on the, I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Whether we have any soundings at the moment from the regulator as to what is required in terms of what we're going to need to lay out. And the final one was, in terms of resources, are we confident we have put forward the resources to make the maximum possible progress, that the regulator would like to see, given that there clearly are constraints here that I think we all recognise.
Apologies, too many thoughts in one's head. On the resourcing point, I think Mr. Dark has set out, we have 3 surveyors in post. We are bringing in some additional support to cope with staff who are sick. We've also looking to recruit some additional resource to help with the arranging, sort of logistics and coordination of appointments, because we know that can be very time consuming in itself. I think what the expectations of the regulator are at the moment is that we, carry on with the programme that we've committed to, so with the number of visits, the attempts, and see that fulfilled. We've set out our targets for carrying out those inspections. I think it's a case of comply or explain. I think, secondly, what they will also ask for, and they ask for it now, because we declare, we provide a return that declares our level of non-decency. And again, we have to make assumptions on that with properties that we've not been able to get access to, for example. But we'll use a rationale for that, and I know that's an item that we'll be talking about at the Consumer Standards Compliance Group coming up, to make sure that we're doing all we can to project that strong rationale. So we'll be talking with colleagues who are on that group to ensure that we've got that strong, robust position. Because as we get more surveys completed, we just need to be really clear. One, we've done all we can, best endeavours to get access to properties. We're managing any risks that we might be aware of. We're taking all those actions that we need to gain access to the properties, and we're using the information effectively to inform the current programme, certainly addressing any hazards that might exist and can make sure they're complete, and then also the programme to ensure those buildings, those homes remain decent into the future.
So can I assume that you're still aiming for 100%? Yes. Yep. And that all those properties you haven't got access, you've got property by property a reason why. What I'm thinking here is the concern is where we have particularly a tenant who may be having other difficulties that causes issues we're not aware of, and we need to be aware. And perhaps sometimes we've got tenants who need different resources, not just a question of access to the property. And so will we have a property by property list of all the exceptions, as well as the preventative measures or the other measures potentially to offset that fact we haven't got into those properties?
So, Chair, once we've come to the end of the cycle, we've made all attempts, will we keep track of properties that we haven't been able to get into, and that will also be a trigger for if we haven't had access through another means, or communication, we can then look at that as an investigating for any other concerns.
Particularly looking at possibly need to have social services involved in one or two cases. I think that wouldn't be a surprise to any of us, that there will be some of those.
Yeah, we do recognise that in some cases it might be that residents have let us in for other things, but not for this. So I think we need to make that clear when we provide the breakdown, that in some cases it might be for this instance they're not willing to let us in, and we're exploring how we can convince them to let us in. But in other cases there might be where we haven't had access through other means, and we'd triangulate that with the other teams and no access.
Or is they're not willing because there's an underlying reason that we're not aware of, that I'm worried about. Councillor Knight, did I see you? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go back to communication. I think we could maybe improve on the communication more by even have resident meeting to explain to resident, to tell them that how serious the situation is if they don't give us access to the building. So I think we could improve on that some more.
Very good question, and I think that could be an ideal article for our next newsletter. To inform why we, what value it serves, that we're not doing this because we have nothing else to do, but it's an important part of us being able to, plan improvements to people's homes and to make sure that we've got the funding and the capacity to do that. So I think that's a good suggestion. We can communicate that better.
Yes, Councillor Melrose.
No, I think that is good. And to follow on from the newsletter, obviously we go to resident engagement groups, which I know is later on in the agenda. So maybe raise it there, maybe ask the question of why, because it might be, you always book it and I'm working. Not everyone's fortunate to work from home, which means they might go, when you come over, I need to book half a day off work, or I need to arrange with someone to. So it's just probably do a bit more deeper look as well. Potentially we could ask that question, appreciating that it will only depend on who comes to the resident group meetings. It might be the people who let us in, but it might give some insight.
Mr. Dart, did you want to comment that?
Yeah, it's just to say, at the moment we are targeting specific properties with particular issues, but now we're getting to the end of that list in terms of attempting access. We will be moving on to more geographical-based work, so that does increase the prospect of communication to wider groups of residents as part of that process.
Councillor Bird.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're looking at convincing tenants why it's good for them, and I think that's the message. It's good for you because you could get X, Y, and Z, which might help. It might also help if we actually visited on Saturdays and Sundays, so people haven't got to have time off work if those are in employment. And I finish with why I'm very concerned about not getting into properties. When I was portfolio holder, we had a tenant in a high-rise block who restructured his flat and took all the walls out and put others in. Now, it's right one doing it, but if you get a few doing it, it's a problem. So having been to that situation, I'm very wary of long-term places we've not been into. So I think everything we can do to get access is really welcome. But I think looking at weekends might be an idea, because we're doing it for you, the tenant. Why should we upset your life? It's what we want to do. So we'll come in at weekends when you're there. It's easier for you. Might be a thought. Contractors might not like it.
Any of the officers wish to comment on? Yes, Mr. Margar.
Yeah.
One of you.
Sorry. We are offering weekend appointments now for residents. So that is something that we are offering.
I've got a question here in terms of the we've done 4,500. So I'm looking at the exact number again. These surveys have been done for within the last 5 years. What is the cadence? What is the cadence of the surveys that have already been done? When will they need to be redone because they reach their 5 year? Is it going to be 4,000 all at one go? or are they spread out over the next 4 years evenly?
Our plan is to carry out 20% of the stock per year. So we carry out a 20% survey per year, and then we're making sure that we're keeping data up to date. We can then target any particular properties that we might have intelligence or concerns about, or if we say, for example, identify trends of damp and mould in certain streets, we can then look to target the properties as part of that sample. So yeah, that's our trajectory.
So potentially somebody might have a survey done after 3 years because they're in that 20%, but could anybody also fall into not having a survey done in 6 years because their 20% allocation happens to come 6 years after they last had a look? They were last looked at. It's the lumpiness, because if you have 2,000 in 1 year, that's 40% in 1 year. And you want to get 20%, how do you move the extra surveys around? Do you see what I mean? Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, I do, and yeah. I mean, as I said, we will be looking at targeting particular properties, but we will obviously endeavour to make sure we carry everything out within 5 years, that they don't fall outside of the 5 years. So we will endeavour to do that, definitely.
So some may get a survey after 4 years rather than 5.
Some may get a survey after 4 years. Some may get a sort of some may get a survey earlier. One thing that the regulator says in the guidance that's in the appendage of the report is, from the regulator's perspective, is not necessarily every 5 years. It could be, if we're aware of particular issues of certain stock, they might expect that to be done every 3 years. So, so as I said, at the moment we've targeted groups of properties that have never had a stock condition survey carried out. We've targeted groups of properties that have got older stock condition surveys, and the data indicates that they may not comply fully with decent homes. So, as I said, we've been targeting those groups of properties at the moment, and the non-decency rate is actually quite low, in the surveys that we're carrying out, particularly in the properties that have never been surveyed. A lot of those properties have actually been in very good condition. Tenants have kept them up together. The tenants have actually said, where we have got in, they said, I'm quite happy for you to come in. So the information that we are getting is that although we haven't got a survey, those properties are in good condition.
One final question from me. Mentioning 5.1, additional administrative support is going to be recruited to help with the manual inputting of the database. When's that coming on board?
I think that, excuse me, I think that's currently in train with scoping out. I think there's certainly on the void side as well. So I think in the next few weeks we'll have agreed exactly what's required and begun the process to bring some resource in. So
that's January at the earliest. Yeah. So we understand the timing. I think it would be helpful to have that be a bit clearer in the report. Members, anything else on this? Again, I think this is just a to-note. Having a lot of to-notes tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, officers, as always, on that one. We then move on to item 8, fire safety actions. Briefing on the fire safety actions. And Mr. Watson, you weren't here previously, but we certainly had a lot of concern about the numbers. The numbers still sort of been moving around a little bit, but I think we're beginning to get a little bit more stability. is it you who's going to introduce the report before handing over to members? Okay.
Yeah, so as I said, yeah, the report sets out that we are compliant in terms of carrying out the actual fire risk assessments. That's a key requirement of the legislation to actually carry out a fire risk assessment. So the report confirms that. Further to the previous report to the committee, it's now reporting on the outstanding actions and the recategorisation of high-risk actions, which was previously discussed at committee. It's also following on with the reporting of the historic legacy actions separately from the new actions that are now arising with the repeated fire risk assessments. The report also sets out the key work streams and processes for delivering the actions that are arising from the fire risk assessment, and provides information how it is managed. So that's a brief introduction. So I'm happy to take questions.
Members. Councillor Dixon, thank you.
Just a couple of queries, really. I know we've got down to of the actions that are overdue, so in 2.2 and the report, there are just 4 left of the high risk. Given that it's such a small number, could you tell us what those are, what the high risk actions are that are needed? So,
sorry.
Those 4 fire risk actions.
What those 4 actions?
Yeah.
What those 4 actions are?
Yes, the high risk one.
If you bear with me, I would need to quickly look it up, but yeah.
Mr. Margard, in the
Just
meantime,
need to log back in a minute, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I know in Appendix 1, the 4 remaining, and this might be a follow-up question, refer to electrical cupboard compartmentation, fire stopping required. Those remain high after the classification. And I know Mr. Watson could probably give some practical examples of that, of what he's seen. And I think just to reinforce, I know that certainly it came up on the pre-meeting questions about sort of the descriptions here, and so how come these look very high risk but they're low. I think these categories are based off the fire risk assessment itself, so they're quite sort of, this is prescriptive categories. So within that, the actual meanings can vary. But I think I'll sort of pass over to Mr. Watson and Mr. Dark just to comment on, and back to sort of Appendix 1. What typically those issues might involve, and if there's any practical experience they have of seeing such actions and what they look like.
I think there seems to be, I want to say, a focus on the statistics, and rightly so. For me, there's more in the back that happens with it, and perhaps there's, I want to say, not the global understanding of what we do. So although I'm relatively new to the business, trying to find out the nuances of how we work and inheriting a lot of actions, having to absorb them, to understand them, to challenge them, and then to technically facilitate our requirement under the fire safety order to discharge them. There's a timeline, and perhaps some things need to improve when I talk about the timeline, because some things that are reported, for instance, I know some comments were made about the risk of electrical items in the means of escape. Any way in or any way out is a means of egress or ingress, and it is a means of escape. Some of those risks that are, I want to say, reported, albeit historic, when I've challenged that with our assessor, now bear in mind some of these are what we call legacy actions of 2022, some of the challenges have presented to us that when we challenged it, they said we were overzealous post-Grenfell. The unfortunate part about that, in absence of jumping in my car and visiting every property and looking at every action, the data that we get from our system doesn't give us a real description of the reality of it. And I've actually got examples if perhaps it'd be prudent to see some at some point, be that later or at some kind of an introduction to what we do and how we go about the process, because the difficulty we have with the time, we get an action. It might say something prescriptive. Now, a fire risk assessment, for those that aren't really aware of what happens, they're defined categories within the fire safety order, and they're imported. And then, in my experience of working for the regulator, they're not always accurate. When I say accurate, there are many factors that look at a statement to a risk or a perceived risk. And that could be age, risk tolerance, form of training. There's many ways of being trained. One of my nuances, having come from the fire service, I'm very pro-fire service. We know a bit about fire. However, I'm not suggesting that somebody with a real in-depth health and safety background, for instance, cannot have a good understanding of fire. But it's more a theoretical base than a practical base. Where I go with that, for instance, we've had, and I've got examples here, of cladding that might accelerate fire growth and prohibit people being able to leave the property safely. Having visited those properties and taken examples of what they report, and the reality is that they're non-combustible. They are mineral fibre boards, they are metallic or have been concrete, and they wouldn't present any kind of risk really. And that's how you can get from a visual, this is a high risk, to something that actually isn't really a risk. But in short of some of those things, what other nuances that go with that, post-Grenfell, a Type 1 fire risk assessment now will look at things like external walls, and it will look at balconies and stuff like that. So all of those considerations were not on an original assessment. Now, there's a time lapse between what we do now and what was in place before. Because of that, there's a need. There's I don't know, it's not an excuse, but it's a global need within what we do here in the UK, and those skills aren't there. So people are reporting on the modern standards and the latest training that they have, but there's no regard to what might have been perfectly acceptable and has been in place and is robust and works in comparison to what the standards are today. And there's no, again, I've got examples of that where, for instance, an electrical enclosure in a concrete built room that is open to air, that is locked, padlocked, and beyond a gate with again locked. Above it, a concrete slab with electrical cabling that goes through conduit and is totally encased. And they claim that it's high risk and it can't harm anybody. We're having to go through them one by one systematically, and that's a case of either myself physically going to see them, or which is our compliance officer, or using contractors. So another example might be the external wall, wood on some properties, we're having to send out a contractor to go and inspect and to scope any work there. Now, where that might have been suggested that it's a high risk and that we've got to do something within 1 to 3 months, depending on who's narrating it, we then have to engage a contractor, we get a report back, then we might have to then send it out for repair or repatriation, and then re-inspect for us then to be able to sign it off. There's a massive time bound in all of this. Dare I say that what we've got from the legacy, what in my short 6 months here, they're now introducing a new batch and furthermore to come. So it might look like we're actually doing stuff, but there are things that are happening in the background, many things. Some of those things, like, I'm a great believer of the resilience of what we do. And it's not a case of, look, what have I said, or what do we do? It's what happens tomorrow, next week, next year. And part of that might be that if we haven't got that resource, that we look at it, but just because we haven't got it now, it doesn't mean that and a lot of key people have left us in a short amount of time, to be able to continue as normal. And I feel, for many reasons, perhaps, dare I say, a pandemic that we had where we started to work from home, there wasn't that consistency, there's been that interruption that goes with it. It's just a little overview of trying to see what we do. Some things to repair those things. I'm having conversations almost daily about the consistency of the reports that come to us, because I feel that they don't suit our purpose. If I have my ex-inspector regulatory hat on, I would suggest that some of those things are not accurate. And I've seen enough fire risk assessments to be able to have that, I want to say, conversation to people who are making those reports. But it all takes time. We need to be able to set a standard that what they're doing is fit for purpose for us. Also that we can have some resilience in that we can take care of those actions.
So your review, Councillor Dixon, you got your review of when we've gone from 100 and whatever it was, 110 to 10 high risk actions reflects what you've been talking about in terms of trying to understand underneath what has been going on, or what the report was. And that's why you're down to 4. And I think the question would be then, those 4 legacies actions, how long till they're actually, those 4 go to 0 because we fixed the problem?
Yeah, just to confirm, all 4 of those actions are the electrical meter situation that we've been talking about. At the point of preparing this report, we hadn't received the latest fire risk assessments. So we are expecting they will be downgraded in the latest fire risk assessments. And just to confirm that, as you previously reported, Matt has taken a view on this, and the fire risk assessments that are now coming through from our provider, the new round of fire risk assessments, are now downgrading the risks as well, so that they're taking a different approach. They're taking a less risk-adverse approach, and they are now also downgrading the risks, or in some cases moving the risks to a category we have called management to review, which is something to look at in the next 3 years. So we are now seeing a trend of that.
So the 6 new high-risk actions, they're genuinely high risk, is what you're saying? Because these are the ones that say new actions 2025 fire risk assessments. I'm just looking at table in 2.2. if I've understood Mr. Watson correctly, the 4 legacy will likely to be downgraded. And the 6, but the 6 new ones, you're saying, with a more modern assessment, there's still 6 high risk.
One is around a sliding door at the top of the stairs, which I know Matt has said is in no way a high risk. There happens to be a sliding door at the top of the stairs. 2 are electric meters, so the same situation that we're talking about. One is about checking the emergency lighting. So so an order has gone out on that, and the other 2 are issues with the front door of the building. So when they've gone to the property, they found that the front door of the building wasn't secure. So they're considering that high risk in terms of arson. So they're considering that because the front door of the building isn't secure, then there's a risk that somebody could come in and then set fire to the communal area of the building.
Which is by and large they're by and large purpose-built blocks that are concrete by construction, and I'm not saying it can't happen, but we have estates officers that check them daily in some cases.
I'm still hearing that we're not happy with even the modern, the 2025 fire risk actions, that you as the officers think they're being over prescriptive. I mean, potentially.
Yeah.
So that there's still, it sounds to me as though you've got quite a lot of work to do in terms of getting the assessments to this stage where if somebody comes in with a high risk action, it is a high risk action.
Absolutely. So conversely, using the door analogy, if that door didn't fail safe, that people couldn't get out, that's high risk. But the potential of somebody, I'm not saying it can't happen, in a sterile concrete environment, somebody potentially opening the door to start a fire, I'm not saying it can't happen, it's less likely, much less likely.
Members, Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chair. The concern I have is that earlier we saying that we couldn't get access to certain building in the room. So if we couldn't get access to do our inspection, how can we get access now to do a proper fire check?
That's a good question, thank you. Again, I look at the bigger picture and the resilience of what we do. We do tenancy update visits, we do damp and mould surveys, we do some of the other stuff. Again, because of the fire safety law, a part of that is flat front doors, and we have contractors who go out. Again, we have discussions that where, I don't know if I should say this, but where potentially the stock condition surveyors that we have, that they become multi-skilled, that they can facilitate some of those actions whilst they're doing their other surveys. So there's a programme that I've set up ready for that to happen, so they could equally do it.
Thank you.
Mr. Hodges.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to that point, the fire risk assessments are type 1 fire risk assessments for communal areas of blocks, whereas the stock condition surveys are internal domestic dwelling surveys. So they're different assessments.
Councillor Wyman and then Councillor Jones.
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks for the explanation on some of these high risk. It's clear then really that there is quite a margin for error, I suppose, between the professional judgments of various experts here. And I'm not in any way doubting your professional opinion. I think, there is always potentially scope here for experts, particularly in the aftermath of something like the Grenfell disaster and the tragic loss of life, for people to become very risk averse and perhaps over time that becomes more proportionate and we take an overview. Hopefully not a overly sort of lenient and complacent view, because ultimately the lessons of such a tragedy should never be forgotten. But I suppose what I'm just trying to understand here is, in terms of that leeway in experts, I mean, is it open to any local authority to employ the most lenient, most risk, least risk-averse expert and to progress on that basis? Because we do seem, our strategy here seems to be reclassifying rather than fixing.
Thank you. Another question. I'm not 100%, and I don't mind saying that, clear in the contract agreements that were put in place prior to my tenure. It wouldn't be uncommon for how business is now across the UK for there to be a lack of skills within fire risk assessment in particular. We have, in fact, our provider looks after part of our compliance too. So, there is a good synchronisation there. But I would suggest that there is the scope for almost you get what you pay for, and I'm not saying that that's our case, but what it does mean, and I've seen thousands over the years of risk assessments, does mean there are good and bad, in my opinion, of looking at many. And I would suggest, given the scrutiny of, if we use Grenfell Towers as an example, the risk assessor that was there is always the chance of somebody not doing the best job, shall we say. Here, we are means checking it. I'm looking at every detail, but it does take time. And given the history of what we've got, that has to be resourced, and it will balance out over time. I will get to the bottom of it.
Mr. Melgar, do you want to? Thank you, Chair. Speaking as Senior Responsible Officer, obviously I have a keen interest in ensuring that we assess appropriately. We have a building safety lead that sits alongside Matt, Mr. Watson and Mr. Dark, who is also a qualified fire risk assessor. I know we're looking at our internal audit around fire risk compliance coming up as part of a suite of internal audits that we have to provide that third-party assurance. So I think it's as much to us to provide assurance, obviously to me, that I'm happy, and this committee and members, that we are taking a risk-based approach. We've got the right balance, but we're absolutely not putting any resident at risk as a result. And I think what we try to do in this update paper is provide that reassurance. And while I think taking a steer from the last meeting where we sought to try and present the clearest picture, having been some ambiguity about what's a high risk, what isn't. So absolutely explaining that process we've gone through, but also stressing the work that we have underway and setting out the timescales for such within Section 5. That absolutely we are committed to getting on and delivering on all of those fire risk actions. Certainly, what we report on as being overdue. This should not. We want to see that continually reducing, and that's a focus for us. But also providing assurance that we have an ongoing programme that will pick up the sort of the lower risk and the management actions that we identify as we go through. Because as we've said, it's a constant process. New fire risk assessments are done. Sometimes because the building changes, it comes up to the 5 years. New actions will appear also from other inspections. So there will always be an element of that. So I think hopefully we just try and provide assurance that we're not trying to sort of just shift the goalposts. This is about ensuring we've got the right categorisation so that we can ensure that we're focusing on the genuine high-risk actions that are most at risk, but our residents at risk. Make sure they're carried out promptly and timely, but also have a proper and clear programme of work, a variety of work streams to address the sort of medium and lower risks over a period of time that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the two tables in 2.6, more specifically the top one of those, the legacy fire risk actions time overdue table. And I'm seeing a quite interesting distribution between the first 12 months of out of date. We've got sort of 150 across the first 12 months. then it dips all the way down to 10, and then bounces right back up again, really high to 425, and then down a little bit again when you get to 3 to 4 years out of date to 295. So is there a narrative that explains that sort of why the more recent ones, well, that sort of bouncing around nature of that table? Is there a workflow within that medium risk category that you're intending to work from? Are you trying to go perhaps from the most overdue working forwards, or is there a specific methodology to how you're working through those?
Yeah, the pattern is dictated by the frequency of the fire risk assessment. So, majority of our low-rise stock will have a fire risk assessment every 3 years. So that's why there's a pattern of high numbers now and then high numbers historically. Some mid-rise properties have a fire risk every 2 years. High-rise blocks have one every year. So there's different timings for those risk assessments, and that explains that. And then, as I've put in the comments to the questions, it's only in this current year there's been a dedicated resource to actually close down a lot of actions that are administrative actions. Or are issues that the fire risk assessor couldn't determine when they were on site, so they couldn't get access to a cupboard. They're asking us to clarify, has an electrical inspection been done in the common area? They're asking us to clarify, have we got smoke detectors in the flats? So a lot of those historic actions, around 50% of those medium risk actions that are outstanding, are about updating that administratively.
I think what would be useful over time on this would be to see this table 2.6 over time. So we've got 2.6 here. This is the end of September, I think. And then we'll have a look at the table in end of December so we can actually see the progress. At the moment, it's a static table, and I don't know whether last month it was 695 rather than 295, or whether it was 295 and there's nothing happened. So I think that's what we want to see, the trends. So I think if you can take that as an action, please. Mr. Watson, yeah.
Can I just make one more comment on that? I think other than the review of what we're doing, one of those parts of that review will be the cadence of what we do, because we seem to be working hard to get them, and then there's a spike because we've just had some done. We're battling that spike, if you like, and then there's another set to come out because of those annual or biannual inspections, which will give us another set of data. But I can't do it all today, but I will have a better cadence moving forward. That's my hope, certainly when we come to reviewing it.
Thank you. Any other comments, members?
Well, can I just ask for clarification then? Is that 12 to 24 months so low then, because this sort of all started a couple of years ago, and so is it related to the time period that we have been ongoing on this program? Is why those numbers are so low in that year? Right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move us on, members. I think this is a very important item, but I think we're starting to get an understanding now after several goes at this this charity. So we're going to move on to compliance plan progress. Provides an update on the current position and progress against the Consumer Standard Improvements Plan since last month. I think, first of all, I think this is one of the reports where Councillor Barnes mentioned it's very much better and very much easier to read. So thank you for that. Who's leading them, Mr. Smith or Miss Morrison? Oh, no, okay, Mr. Mogart.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come in and do just a quick intro on this report. I'll take it as read to begin with. This is, and using this meeting, this extra meeting, as an opportunity to socialise the sort of refreshed reporting that we intend to use to committee. Taking feedback from the committee, from Consumer Standards Compliance Board and the regulator, the aim is to bring something to this meeting which is more concise, more focused, draws attention to progress made and, crucially, to exceptions in progress and performance. This is not the finished article. I know that members have commented on some of the gaps. The intention is that we will sort of refresh, carry out any sort of minor changes, formatting to the structure. We've had feedback from the regulator of social housing. We'll be strengthening the appendix that accompanies the report, which includes the compliance data. We'll be including the refreshed presentation for the action plan as well. So if the committee can be patient for the next cycle, we'll have a refreshed, sort of fully formed, fully completed, up-to-date report that will then reflect the current position on performance. So it'll be very welcome to get a steer. Is the direction of travel? Obviously, it's been explained. It's welcome, which is good. But if there are any things that members feel are missing that need adding, amending, we would like to sort of use this sort of format for the foreseeable to sort of get into a cadence and cycle of reporting before making any drastic changes. But I'll also, I think, just cover when we met with the regulator a couple of weeks ago, certainly we explained what we were trying to do. They were supportive of that, again, making things more clear, more concise, focused on exceptions. I think they did ask for sort of strengthening around particular areas, and that will be incorporated within the appendix around the compliance, stock condition. We'll also be including, obviously we have the next item on AWAB's law, information about damp and mould and disrepair. So we'll be strengthening what the committee will see as performance within the report, focused on compliance, on obviously all the big six, as well as those other areas, and then making sure that the report itself is absolutely clear on the progress. And I know we've been working on making sure that we can report on the progress against all the actions. I think the regulator also, along with asking questions around the stock condition progress, fire action remediation, they're just also keen to see us deliver on what we've set out in terms of inspections, using data, and delivery of the fire action programme. They will also keen to see us evidence, and I think it's something else that we will incorporate within the report, just how we check and challenge, where we sign off actions as being complete. Certainly looking down the line, I'd want to, and we're looking at how we provide that evidence to show where actions are complete. Is that supported by policy, evidence of training? Have we incorporated that within internal governance? Do we have the actions and minutes to show that? So we're applying a sort of greater rigour to make sure that actions aren't necessarily just completed because a piece of paper has been produced. Not that that was the case, but applying that consistently so that we can assure the committee and also the regulator that where actions are completed, we've got evidence to back that up and show that. So I think very happy to take questions. I would welcome anything particularly around the format and presentation, but with the full commitment that we will have a fully populated version of this coming to the next committee.
Okay. Thank you. Members, you've all been stunned into silence, which is very unlike you as a committee. Anybody want to make a comment? Any questions? Are you happy? Are you happier with this format than you were previously? Councillor Dixon, you're nodding your head vigorously.
Yes, definitely, it's much clearer. Yeah.
Any other comments? Questions? Councillor Barton.
yes, it is good. Yes, it is good. But I just think that after a couple of meetings, then we'll get a flavour and we'll be able to see where the stats are going. Hopefully upwards instead of downwards or straight across. But yeah.
As always, you've heard me say, use the word trend charts, etc. It's long-term trend charts is really what would be very useful, so we can actually see the progress and give ourselves a pat on the back where it's good progress and kick in the shins where it's not so good. But I think we need to see the trends beyond 3 months. But I think it's a very encouraging start. So thank you. Mr. Knight.
Just coming really, really brief. I think the team have done a lot of work in terms of resetting how we do the performance reporting. We've got to get it, as Christian said, redone for November as well. And I think one of the things we've got to be mindful of is that we've got to get inspection ready, because we know we're going to be inspected within 2 years. Okay, so I think, but I want to put on record my thanks as well, actually, Chair. I think the team have worked exceptionally hard on the preparation for the meeting, and I think it's been a really good discussion tonight as well. Thank you.
I think one of the lack of questions is actually a reflection of the fact that it's a lot easier to read and people can actually get it first time without needing to ask too many questions. Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chair. I think well done to the team for the report, but I think the next one would give us more idea on what we need to scrutinize more.
Yes, I'd agree with you, Councillor Knight. Anybody else want to add anything else on this other than thank you, Councillor Melrose?
I'll continue with the thank yous. I do think it is, I appreciate your first one, Councillor Knight, but I think if you were here at the start, I think you'll agree this has been a journey of presentation. And I think it's got to a place where actually residents who are going to see these papers could actually understand them as well. And I think it's a long time, it's took a while, but I think we are getting there. And yes, I think the focus is to get us inspection ready is the focus for the next 12 months. And I can see councillors have already put their head in the hands. It's going to be another journey. But yes, thank you to the team.
I would say, I hear what you say about being inspection ready, but we've got to do this job properly. Then I think automatically we will be inspection ready. That's what I would encourage you to do, rather than just to target the audit or the inspection. We've got to actually get the underlying processes correct. Councillors, I'm going to move on. It's just coming up to 8 o'clock. I'm going to move on to item 10. Again, I think item 9 is just a note. I'm sure I'd be corrected by the team on the left if it wasn't. AWAB's law, which I think went into effect on Monday. It's now live, and we've been preparing for it for however long it's taken. Mr. Dark, it says here that you're probably going to give us a summary on this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the report sets out that we've taken a proactive approach and we're well prepared for AWAB's law. It clarifies that the recent changes in the guidance means that AWAB's law at this stage doesn't just apply to damp and mould, but in terms of any emergency works for things such as total loss of heating or gas leaks or serious leaks to a property, that those kind of emergency works will also come within the scope of AWAB's law. So the report also then sets out that the policy has been updated, procedures and processes have been updated. So new arrangements are in place also for understanding the residents' health circumstances, which is something that we need to take account of in terms of taking an approach to a risk of damp or risk of a leak to a tenant because of their health circumstances. So the report sets out all of that. And I think I'll just close to say that the trajectory is also set that there are currently 29 housing health and safety rating risks or hazards that are set out. Damping mould is one of those, and that's the main one, as I said, that's been put in. But they will, in the next 2 years, be progressively introducing other risks and other hazards into that. So a lot of the work that we've done is designed for future proofing to get us in the position that we can actually then adapt and expand our processes and procedures for those those implementations as well.
Okay, thank you. Members. Councillor Barton, you're first off the mark this time.
Why not? With this being a new law, but I suppose it's strengthening what we should have been doing anyway. If somebody does ring up with damp and mould, I know we've got a lot of other things that are important as well, but trying to be on the ball, does that raise a red flag? More of an urgent, we better look at this a bit quicker than concrete, something or other. Do we have an escalated procedure for this at the moment? Just to keep an eye on damp and mould, and probably that's what it's doing.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Yes, in effect, yes, we have. We've set out a new triage process for damp mould, which is scalable to AWAB's law when new parts of it are introduced in the new year. And yes, that is done through our CRM system as well. So we've built a whole basically a system workflow, really, a set of forms that are prompted from the very opening of a call with a tenant if they mention the word damp mould, AWAB's law, condensation, any of those key things. And yes, we'll go through this whole triage process within the CRM, which then flows naturally into works orders if necessary or inspections thereafter.
Councillor Bird.
Yeah, it's in use now.
Yes, credit where credit's due. I reported the damp issue only this week, and you've already got a load of actions in place very quickly. So I was very impressed.
Encouraging start. I hope that that won't be the only experience. Councillor Jones.
Using your professional expertise, what proportion of our tenants would you say have ever heard of AWAB's law, or even know what the 7 responsibilities of the landlord are? More or less than 1%?
And can I follow that up? I know where you're going in this. Have residents been advised, in other words, AWAB's law and the changes to the policy? I think is also the underlying question, Councillor, if I can interpret your...
I mean, I've previously on this committee sort of pointed out, maybe that's a strong term, but sort of requested better communication for tenants, for our residents. And it's just a question, how effectively do you think we're educating our tenants on their rights on this matter?
Mr. Margot.
Thank you. I think it touches on a broader question about how well we promote all rights and obligations on our tenants, particularly the rights that they have. I know with the AWAB's law going live, it's the media have been promoting it, social media, the BBC, the radio. I mean, I think it's been covered. I think it is incumbent on us to make sure that we have that information, and we were talking about we're updating our damp and mould section of the website to reflect and make it clear around responsibilities that we have for acting on the back of AWAB's law. I think that's important. I think we are, I'm looking at Mr. Smith for the December meeting, bringing forward actions around resident engagement and communication. And I think it's a really important point about promoting more broadly the rights that tenants have, of which AWAB's law is one of them. I think specifically, I wouldn't hazard a guess over the number of tenants who were aware. But I do know from having looked this week that it is there aren't many organisations who are sort of putting a lot on their media websites. I think some more than others. But I think we'll definitely take that away to look at how we promote AWEB's law as part of broader rights to residents.
Go on.
So I'm aware as well we do a residents newsletter as well. Have we put it in there in a recent edition? Are we putting it in the next edition? That would be nice to get an action on.
I think we're currently scoping out what will be going into that newsletter, and we have a few ideas. I think damp, mould, and condensation. I think on the back of AWEB's law starting this week. I was talking to colleagues today about a broader sort of staff briefing again on the back of that. I think to showcase the work that's been done around the triage system, to talk through examples, to make sure that all staff are aware. And I know that training's been put in place and there has been communication. But I think the key to particularly AWEB's law, damp and mould, and particular hazards, is the eyes and ears of all staff who have touch points with residents, going into their homes, speaking to them, and also the work of our contractors. So I think that's absolutely, that can be on our list of items to include with our next newsletter.
Yes, I just think that we need to be careful about the newsletter being too text heavy. It needs to be much more straightforward, because it sounds like we've got quite a lot of things to go into that newsletter. Ms. Hodges.
I'll just add to your first point there. If a caller is presenting with issues that are subject to AWEB's law, part of the triage process is actually to ask them whether they are aware of whether they're aware of their rights under AWEB's law itself, and actually to provide a statement within that triage process as well. Also, the next stage of that is also to send them a text update or an email update of their case number and ID, but also contained within is a link to the Ombudsman as well. So, yes, if they're presenting with issues, we are providing them the detail of what they're...
Councillor Whiteman.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to sort of add to the need for publicity in regards to this. I think with AWEB's law, there's a lot of publicity around the damp and mould. I don't know that it's been quite so well publicised that there's this obligation for potential emergency hazards to be investigated within 24 hours. And I think some publicity around that aspect of it would be particularly welcome. I don't know if you now have do you have a 24-hour reporting line? You know, it would be quite useful to give some information on what sort of thing qualifies for that, and to give some information about how people report it and that right.
Thank you. In essence, actually, in terms of how we deal with emergencies, how we deal with substantial hazards or urgent works, and how we deal with routine works, does not change as part of the AWEB's law process. What we've had to put in place is a much clearer and recorded detail of what we're doing about those cases. Essentially, we've always dealt with emergencies within 24 hours. They're raised to a contractor with a 4-hour response time to complete the works within 24 hours. That's the point of making safe. Once you've made safe, you've then got a substantial hazard to deal with over a period of time, and over 5 days as far as AWEB's law, but that maps nicely alongside of our historic urgent repairs category as well. So, in essence, those timescales haven't really changed just because AWEB's law has come about.
I was thinking, is there anything we can do within the emails that go out to council tenants, just saying, click on this link to learn about all the emergency, all the AWEB law related items perhaps, but just a suggestion for you. Any other? Councillor Jones.
I was going to follow up on the same topic really, but this applies to more landlords than just housing authorities like us, doesn't it? Yeah. Perhaps it's worth getting in touch with the social media team or at DC, maybe giving a link to the Ombudsman for renters who are in the private sector as well.
to make them aware of the laws? Because
Well, slightly outside our remit, I would echo that. Yeah, I would echo that.
in the same.
With the private landlord section. Any other comments, members? Thank you very much. Mr. Dark, you're going to give us an update regarding the procurement process for the repairs and maintenance. I think we only need a quick, short update. Let's give them the time.
Yeah, a quick, short update. The programme was to have the procurement completed by the end of March next year. We're in a position now where we have new procurement regulations, and those new procurement regulations basically have caused contractors to raise lots and lots of questions, lots and lots of queries during the process, and also to look to take advantage of part of that new process, which is a negotiation procedure. So as a result of the queries and a result of requests for matters that wanted to be discussed, then we've had to extend the timescales for the procurement and enter into negotiation, the negotiation phase. So we have currently now got bids from 6 contractors. We are currently evaluating those bids. When the evaluation of those bids is completed, then we will move to the negotiation phase of that programme.
Are we going to hit April the 1st?
Sorry?
Are we going to hit the original date?
No. So we're looking at options now
For
regarding
how long that
regarding
is
how
it going to be? Are we talking 12 months, 6 months? You don't know that.
I think we'd be looking between 6 and 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could I suggest, unless members have anything else to add to this, that we ask you to just circulate an update when you have a revised,
Yes.
just to let us know as a committee that it's going to be May the 1st or August 1st, whatever it will be.
Yeah.
Once you've got something in place.
Yeah.
Unless members have any other views on that, I don't think there's much more we can say on this at the moment. No. Before we go on to the final point, I want to go back to AWeb's law, and apologies, and just ask you if we could put this on a follow-up for the update work programme, please. I guess we need to have about a 6-month run-in on this. So we're looking at, I guess, probably the first one in the new municipal year, first Housing Scrutiny Committee. So sorry, I forgot to mention that at the end of the last one. So, Mr. Smith, you've been patiently waiting there this evening. Could we have a verbal update, please, on the status of the development of the resident engagement plan, and whether there have been any identified under-resourced areas that need addressing, and the specific timeline? We're going to have an update on it, please.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just a brief update then. We've been developing the action plan, and that is progressing well. We've produced a first draft, which we will finalise now over the next 2 to 3 weeks by getting further input from housing staff and involved residents, ready to present at your meeting on the 2nd of December. The team have not so far identified any under-resourced areas, but we will keep reviewing this important delivery requirement. In terms of the specific timeline, we take account of the importance of improving communications and the extent to which we're engaging with residents at the moment, but balancing that against the resources and the overall capacity of the housing service to effectively deliver the changes together with the consumer standards improvements. So we'll bring forward key plan with dates and responsibilities and outcomes, and the committee will see from that
when we're going to achieve the required actions. So following the refresh of the Council's marketing and communication strategy, which I refer to in the report in September, which will be published by the end of the year, we have asked that the Head of People and Communications and the Marketing and Communication Manager attend one of our housing meetings to go through with them their sort of planned timetable and to look to see what support they can give us in meeting our sort of development timetable as well in terms of improving communications. Yeah, we'll be reporting the full action plan at the meeting on the 2nd of December.
Okay, thank you. So you're on course for that. That's good. Members, any questions to Mr. Smith? I think everybody has worn out their question bank tonight. So no, that's encouraging, Mr. Smith. We look forward to that in December on the work programme. I'm also looking at the work programme, so I was just checking it, that I think we have the repair maintenance contract on the December work programme. I think what I've just heard, that needs to move back. Okay. Will give us more time for Mr. Smith's report, which he'll be delighted with, I've no doubt. Members, any other comments, questions? We then at 8:20, I close the meeting, just thanking everybody for their participation. Thank you, officers, for your participation tonight and for all the work you're doing. And thank you, members. And with that, I'll say good night to our viewers online.